Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. Today on the podcast, we're talking about good coffee, and we're specifically asking the question, what is good coffee? This is a question that has plagued me since the beginning of my career and probably before that. And the longer I am in the coffee industry, the more willing I am to admit that I have no idea what good coffee tastes like. And the reason I say that is because taste is subjective. And when you ask yourself the question, what does good coffee or what is good coffee? It requires a number of questions to be asked in order to answer the question. First of all, who's asking? Who is asking you whether that's a good coffee? Is it a consumer? Is it a coffee professional? Is it a producer? Is it an importer? Is it a big, massive conglomerate that's coming to you for your opinion? The next thing to ask is, what do you mean by coffee? When you say coffee in what is good coffee, are you talking about a cherry? Are you talking about parchment? Are you talking about roasted coffee? Are you talking about brewed coffee? Are you talking about espresso? What version of coffee are you talking about? And then the other thing to ask yourself when you're saying what is good coffee is, what kind of an answer are you looking for? And what specifically are you referring to in the part of good? So to put that better, what do you mean by good? And for those listening, not watching, good is in rabbit's ears. So what do you mean by good? And this takes us on a deep, deep dive, which I'm sure if you're simply looking at the title of this podcast episode and saying, but I just want to know if it's a good coffee, well, it's nowhere near as simple. And I think that the problem our industry has gotten into over the years is overlooking the oversimplification of this question. Taste is subjective. And what that means is what I define as good is based on my whole universe. It's based on not only how I define good and bad, it's also influenced by how good, how sensitive or how not sensitive my palate is, which is influenced by my biochemistry. It's influenced by my brain chemistry. It's influenced by my memories. It's influenced by my history. Have I tasted a pineapple from Thailand versus a pineapple from Australia? And how do I define the differences of the two very different ways that those pineapples can taste? That history informs what I think pineapple tastes like, whether I like it or not, what the experience I was having when I tasted that pineapple felt like, is then going to go on to inform whether when there's a Thailand type pineapple flavor in my coffee, whether that's going to be interpreted as a good taste or a not good taste. My experience informs my definition of good. My gut microbiome informs whether I'm going to taste good or not. Certain flavor profiles may trigger a nauseating response because it interacts with my microbiome a certain way. That nauseating response is going to tell my brain that I don't like what strawberries taste like at that moment in time. Every other day I do like strawberries. What is good coffee is an incredibly complex question. If we're talking about the difference between what I consider good coffee and the difference between what your consumer considers good coffee, that's an even more complex exploration. I don't know what your consumer's relationship is with your coffee. I don't know what you're trying to get to when you are roasting your coffee or whether you're brewing your coffee. And so asking somebody's opinion on whether this coffee that you're presenting is a good coffee is incredibly subjective. And from once a cup has been drunk, only the person that's drinking it can tell you whether they think it's good from their perspective. They can't tell you in a way that you can absolutely unequivocally know and replicate their experience. Because even if you drink from the same cup, everything about you is going to initiate a unique response to that coffee. The sip that they had may have been a couple of % temperature difference, which may evoke a different response than when they drink it right now. And if we want to get really intricate about this stuff and look at professionalizing our industry much more in these new changing times, we have to start asking ourselves these kinds of questions. As you guys know, I'm the owner of Elixir Specialty Coffee. And we made a decision right at the beginning of when we established Elixir that we would not tell people what they were tasting in Elixir. And that has been received with a lot of intrigue. We have had people saying, what does the Elixir that you've got available taste like now? And we've made a decision that we won't give people that kind of bias. And the reason we won't give people that kind of bias is because we think that that's unfair. We think that given Elixir is such a unique beverage, it would further hinder the way that you experience the beverage if we tell you what you should be tasting. And I have myself taken that further so that when I go into a coffee shop and drink coffee, I don't want to know what I'm supposed to be tasting. When I contact our roasters, the various roasters that we use for Elixir, I don't want them to tell me what we should be tasting. They know Elixir well enough that they know whether the coffee will work well for Elixir or not. I want to know what my experience is going to be. And I'll tell you a very interesting thing. I, as you guys know, I had COVID and I got sent some samples for Elixir about a couple of weeks before I knew for sure that I had COVID. And I, for the life of me, couldn't understand why everything was tasting so bland. And anyone that would eat with me would think I was crazy. And I was trying like crazy to taste anything in these samples. And I asked for the roast curves because I was convinced that that the coffees had crashed in the roast curve and there was no brightness in them at all. And it hadn't happened. And I would get other people to taste the Elixir and they'd be like, it's amazing. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I can't taste anything. I could smell, but I couldn't taste. So I knew there was something weird going on. I just didn't know what was happening. In a time when we're moving, where people's sensory experiences are shifting and we don't know long term how this is going to affect the way that people experience your coffee, that's something else to take into consideration. But back to our industry. When we consider what is good coffee, when you impart your opinion, you're assuming a position where you and your universe, your universal experience of everything are saying to somebody that you are going to know more than them. Instead of that, I'd perhaps propose that when somebody asks us, is this a good coffee? We ask a bunch of questions so that we can, as professionals, help deliver somebody an experience that they're looking for. How do you, when somebody asks you, is this a good coffee? Or what is a good coffee? We should be saying to them, what kind of coffees do you like to drink? What experience are you looking for? What relationship do you have with fruity flavors? Or a bunch of questions. And look, this is new for us. This idea of having to take into consideration a vastly evolving coffee consuming culture, wherever we are around the world. And that's a really exciting thing for us. But we as an industry need to let go of this concept of good coffee, because if somebody really enjoys drinking a very dark roast, who am I to tell them that that's not a good coffee? It gives them everything that they need. That first sip that makes them feel great, the endless need to want to drink more and more of it. And it helps to get that coffee sold so that producers can continue to do what they want to do, which is produce more coffee. Just some things to ponder along the way. I hope that you have taken this very simple question of what is good coffee and understood the invitation that that question poses us in the exploration that we could take. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.